The morning of her 82nd birthday, Eleanor Rossi woke to the smell of rain, a clean, mineral scent seeping through the slightly open window of her bedroom. It mingled with the familiar ghosts of old roses from the sachet in her linen closet and the faint, forever aroma of wood polish from the banister Frank had installed 50 years ago. The light was the soft, gray wool of October, filling her small, tidy kitchen in a way that felt both comforting and vast. She made her tea, the ritual precise. 1 spoon of Earl Grey, the kettle whistling its familiar, piercing song, the warmed porcelain cup, pale blue with a hairline crack, cradled in her palms. The heat seeped into her bones, but couldn't quite reach the quiet, hollow place the day had already carved inside her chest. She had seen the flyers for the community center's Oktoberfest taped to lampposts, the cheerful block letters feeling somehow accusatory. She knew her son, David, had a critical project deadline in the city, a presentation to the big guns, as he'd put it, his voice taut with a stress she could feel across the phone line. Her daughter, Lisa, was 2 states away, deep in the minivan trenches of parenting, shuttling her twins to soccer tournaments that seemed to form the geographic and emotional grid of her life. They'd called last night, voices bright with hurried love, layered over the digital hum of their worlds. "We'll celebrate properly next weekend, Ma, promise. A big dinner, just us." The promises were real, she knew, born of genuine love, but they lived in a world of buzzing phones and cascading calendar notifications, a language of minutes saved and multitasking. Her world was measured in the slow, velvety bloom of the African violet on the windowsill, the reliable, companionable creak of the 3rd stair, the way the afternoon sun painted a perfect rhombus of gold on her faded living room rug at precisely 3:15 p.m. So she spent her birthday as she spent most days, yet with a heightened awareness that made every detail poignant. She dressed in her favorite cornflower blue cardigan, the one Lisa had given her 3 Christmases ago. She walked to the market, her sensible shoes meeting the pavement with a steady rhythm. The air was crisp, carrying the damp, sweet decay of fallen leaves and the distant, nostalgic tang of someone's first fireplace use of the season. She bought a single perfect Honeycrisp apple, its skin cold and taut under her fingers, and a small, cheerful bunch of yellow chrysanthemums. Mr. Chen at the market, his own hands gnarled and earth-stained from decades of arranging produce, added a free glossy navel orange to her bag with a wink. "For the birthday girl," he said, having remembered from years past. That small kindness, that thread of memory held by a near stranger, felt like a sudden, unexpected sunbeam on her cheek, warming her from the outside in. Back in her silent kitchen, she undertook the sacred task. She pulled the stained, dog-eared index card from the recipe box. Her mother's looping, graceful script had faded to sepia brown. Sophia's ragu per l'anima, for the soul. She laid out the holy trinity of carrots, celery, and onion, dicing them with a slow, mindful precision. The pancetta sizzled as it hit the pan, its salty, fatty perfume the first note of the symphony. Then the vegetables, their sizzle a softer song. The ground beef and pork made a satisfying hiss. She opened the cans of San Marzano tomatoes, their bright, acidic scent cutting through the richness. She stirred, she added the pinch of sugar, the 2 bay leaves like ancient, brittle scrolls, and then she did the hardest part. She turned the flame to its lowest whisper and let time take over. The simmering scent of garlic, tomato, sweet basil, and deepening meat began to weave itself into the very fabric of the house. It was the fragrant ghost of every Sunday dinner of her childhood, of every chaotic, joyous meal she'd cooked for her own family, of Frank grinning over a heaping plate, sauce caught in his mustache. She set the small, square table in the kitchen nook for one, but used the good linen napkin, the one with the embroidered lily of the valley. She lit a single beeswax candle. Its flame danced, a tiny, living companion. The phone did ring. David, on his lunch break, a muffled cacophony of clattering trays and overlapping conversations behind him. "Happy birthday, Ma. You holding up okay? Order something good, okay? My treat." Lisa, from the windy sidelines of a soccer field, the distant shrieks of children and the shrill blast of a coach's whistle punctuating her words. "Love you to the moon, Mom. The girls made you a card that's practically a museum piece. We'll video call tonight, I swear." Their love was a lighthouse beam, powerful, true, illuminating her for a brilliant moment, but it swept past in a great bright arc before returning to scan the vast, demanding sea of their own lives. Eleanor ate her pasta, twirling the thick pappardelle around her fork, the flavors rich, deep, and layered with memory. The quiet of the house was a companion, but it spoke in whispers. It murmured of David's 5th birthday, a Superman cake she stayed up late decorating, his face incandescent with joy. It echoed with Lisa's 16th, a sleepover filled with giggling and the scent of nail polish. It boomed for a moment with Frank's laugh at her 60th surprise party. She cleared her plate, washed the heavy pot until it shone, and watched the rhombus of sunlight on the rug lengthen, fade, and finally dissolve into the blue-gray of twilight. The candle burned down to a pool of golden wax. Winter came, laying its crisp white blanket over the small backyard where her Frank had once tried and failed to grow tomatoes. It melted into a tentative, muddy spring. Eleanor tended her tiny patio garden, started seedlings and recycled egg cartons, her fingers tracing the miracle of life in miniature. She fell in May, not tragically in a dramatic stroke, but softly, as if she had simply finished the last sentence of a beautiful, long novel and gently closed the cover. She passed in her sleep, in her own bed, under the wedding ring quilt her grandmother had made. In the sleek, hushed, and faintly cold office of Attorney Fields, David and Lisa sat 2 months later. Their nerves were raw with a new, complex grief, the loss of their mother, compounded by the strange, administrative guilt that follows, the should-have-dones and why-didn't-we's that buzzed like static in their minds. Their spouses sat beside them, offering silent support through the pressure of a clasped hand. The room smelled of lemon polish and old paper, the smell of legacies reduced to documents. "Your mother was a woman of remarkable clarity," Attorney Fields began, his voice a calm, neutral river. He read the dry, legal preamble, the being of sound mind clauses that felt both necessary and absurd. Then his tone shifted minutely, as if he too were departing from a script. He cleared his throat and read Eleanor's own words. "My dearest David and Lisa, my greatest wealth was never in banks or safety deposit boxes, but in the quiet, accumulated moments of my life. It is those moments and the love they contain that I now bequeath to you." David shifted in the stiff leather chair. Lisa clutched a tissue, her knuckles white. "To my son, David," the attorney read, leaning slightly into the words, "I leave the original, stained recipe card for my ragu, with the instruction that you must make it from start to finish on one quiet Sunday, entirely with your own hands. Do not rush. Do not delegate the chopping. Let the onions make you cry. Listen to the simmer. The smell that will fill your house will teach you what I could never find the words to say. The patience of love, the alchemy of time. You have spent your life rushing to the next achievement, my brilliant boy. For this one day, I ask you to sit, to stir, to taste, to be utterly present. David's throat closed. The sterile office air vanished, replaced by the visceral, sacred Sunday smell that had permeated his childhood home, a smell he now realized he'd been unconsciously chasing in the hushed, expensive Italian restaurants he took clients to, never finding it, never understanding why. He saw his mother's back at the stove, a constant, steady presence in his memory's kitchen. To my daughter, Lisa, the will continued, I leave my African violet plant and the china cup I drank my tea from every morning for 40 years. The violet is a lesson in subtle care. It thrives on routine, not fuss. It needs just enough water, just enough light, and to be left to simply be. The cup is for you to hold, to feel its warmth in your palms, to understand that some things are fragile and must be cared for daily, intentionally. You care for everyone, my darling, pouring yourself into their cups. Now let this small, quiet life care for you. Water it. Watch it bloom. Lisa's vision blurred. She saw not just the cup, but her mother's hands, speckled with age, veins like gentle rivers under the skin, cradling it at the kitchen table, staring out at the garden with a look of peaceful absorption. It was a moment of pure, quiet being she had witnessed 1,000 times and had, in her busyness, never truly seen. It wasn't emptiness, it was fullness of a different kind. Attorney Fields paused, letting the weight of these intangible gifts settle. Then he adjusted his glasses again. There is a final, material portion of the estate. David and Lisa braced themselves, expecting the division of the house, the small savings account. The remainder of my estate, including the house on Elm Street and all monetary assets, I leave in a perpetual trust. The beneficiary is not an individual, but an event. A confused silence blanketed the room. Each year, on the weekend of my birthday, the trust will fund a community dinner to be held at the local community center. It shall be called the Oktoberfest Supper, free and open to all who wish to come, no questions, no reservations required. The menu shall be my ragout, fresh bread, a simple green salad, and apple cake. There shall be music, real music, not piped-in noise, and long tables, and no one, no matter how new to town or how alone they feel, shall eat by themselves. My children, David and Lisa, are entrusted with its execution, not as a chore, but as their inheritance of connection. This is my true legacy, not what I kept, but what I can now give back to the tapestry of our neighborhood. Love, in my experience, is best served in bowls, passed hand to hand. The silence in the office was now profound, vibrating with a new understanding. David and Lisa were not shocked by greed, but by the breathtaking scale of their mother's grace. They had missed a birthday, and in response, she had architectured a perpetual banquet. She had seen their absence not as a personal rejection, but as a symptom of a wider societal loneliness, a loneliness she had personally known that October day, and with the quiet defiance of a gardener planting a seed in fall, she had transformed it into a blueprint for belonging. The first October after her passing dawned unseasonably warm, the kind of golden day Eleanor would have called a gift. The community center hall, usually echoing with the frantic squeak of basketball sneakers, was transformed. Long tables, begged and borrowed from the church and the VFW, were draped in crisp red and white checkered cloths. The air was thick, gloriously and unmistakably thick, with the smell of garlic, tomato, and basil emanating from two enormous industrial pots that David, following the stained card with a chemist's focus and a novice's reverence, had overseen. His shirt sleeves were rolled up, and for the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about a quarterly report. He was thinking about the sofrito, wondering if it was sweet enough. Lisa arranged centerpieces of bright chrysanthemums in mason jars and set each place with a simple, sturdy plate. Her African violet, now thriving on her sunny kitchen windowsill, had sent up a new spray of blooms, which she had placed on the welcome table next to a framed photo of Eleanor, smiling, holding a spoon. People came, not in a flood, but in a steady, warm stream. Mr. Chen arrived with a box of clementines for the children. The young family from across Eleanor's street, Maya, Ben, and their toddler Leo, whose name Eleanor had known but often hesitated to call out, not wanting to be intrusive, came in, looking shy but curious. Retired teachers, a group of college students who lived in apartments without real kitchens, widowers from the block, a young man who'd just moved to town for a new job, they all trickled in. The hall, so often a cavern of emptiness, filled with a gentle, rising roar of conversation, the clink of cutlery, the scrape of chairs being pulled in, not pushed out. Standing at the head of the serving line, ladle in hand, David looked out at the sea of talking, laughing faces. He saw his sister, her face relaxed in a way he hadn't seen in years, laughing as she helped little Leo fold a paper napkin into a lopsided boat. He didn't feel the familiar, anxious press of a deadline. He felt, instead, the slow, simmering patience of the sauce. He felt the warmth of the steam on his face. He felt, truly and completely, present. Lisa, carrying a basket of warm bread, paused by an elderly man sitting alone. He reminded her of her grandfather, with kind, watery blue eyes. "More bread?" she asked. He took a piece, his hand brushing hers. "Your mother," he said, his voice gravelly, "she once brought me soup when I had the flu, 'bout 10 years back. Never forgot that kindness." Lisa felt a lump rise in her throat, not of sadness, but of awe. Her mother's quiet life had sent out ripples she never known. As dusk settled outside, painting the autumn sky in shades of plum and burnt gold, the hall glowed with a light that had nothing to do with the humming fluorescence overhead. It was the light of shared food, of stories exchanged across generational divides, of a child fallen asleep on a pile of coats to the sound of a local man playing acoustic guitar. It was the light of a story that had begun with an empty chair at a small kitchen table and had now grown to encompass a room full of pulled-together chairs. Eleanor wasn't there, and yet she was everywhere, in the scent that hugged every person in the room like a welcome, in the space she had carved out for togetherness, in the tear David quickly wiped as he tasted the sauce and found it, finally, perfect. She had taken the quiet, aching knot of a missed birthday and with the gentle, resilient strength of a master weaver had unraveled its threads of loneliness to reweave them into a wider, warmer, more vibrant fabric of connection. It was a testament not to what was lost, but to what could be built from the memories of love. It was, her will had proven, an inheritance that multiplied only when it was given away.